Good morning, everyone. Thank you for being here today. I'm sure we'll have a few more people joining us here as their calendar alarms are going off, letting them know that they have a webinar at 9 o'clock. I appreciate you all for being here. Um, my name's Jeremy Cherney. I'm the founder of Tobin Solutions, and I love technology, and I love what Microsoft has made available with Microsoft 365. And there's just so much there that a lot of you don't know about, or maybe you've heard about it, and maybe you'll hear about it again today, and it'll inspire you to get into action around it. So, but that's really what today's about, is for you to learn and discover what some of the opportunities are in here. There's going to be some Q&A along the way, and Amanda's with us, and she'll be monitoring the chat. And at the very end, there'll be some opportunity for Q&A. And at the very end of all this, it really ends for you when you get that survey, and fill that out and let us know how we did. And then we'll also send you a copy of the presentation slides and a link to the video. So thanks for being here. Some of you are coming to these webinars, and I see some familiar names and maybe some new names on there. So it's good to be with you today. And, some of these webinars kind of show up like tips and tricks, and there's nothing wrong with tips and tricks coming away from a webinar. Some webinars you learn a lot more. Sometimes it's how we think about the webinar. So one of the ways you could think about this webinar is think about the various areas of your business. Think about marketing, sales, service, ops, finance, admin, customer, any area you think of, team development. Think about it. There's things about it that are going to work, and things about it that maybe aren't working or aren't working as well as you'd like. And that's like a good thing to know, right? As you're thinking about some of these things, you might be like, yeah, maybe I've got this thing in sales where we're not getting enough information at the beginning of the process. Okay, good. So you can kind of see some of that, but you're like, how do I do that? Maybe there's a tool, or how are we doing it? It's ineffective. I don't know. So, but all of that kind of stuff is what I call the gap, right? There's where you are now and how it's working and the effectiveness of it and whatever you would call that, and where you'd like it to be. And all there stands between you and where you want it to be is this gap. And then the question is, what goes in the gap? Sometimes in a system or process, what's in the gap is there might be some opportunities to automate, to improve delivery, to help the team. Maybe you want to increase profits as part of the gap, or revenue. That can be part of what's in your gap. Those are those outcomes you might want to have in there. So as you're going through today's webinar, have a few of those ideas. Maybe take a few seconds and just write a couple areas down. Another place to look is what drives you insane at work. Sometimes it might be a system or process that isn't being followed, and it might just be that, someone doesn't know about it, or it could be more systematized, or it's too up to chance, So think about that as you're going through today. You might get some additional value out of it. And if you come away with some tips and tricks that make a difference, then I'll be just as pleased. Microsoft 365 through the years, it's been around for a long time. Just kind of getting, I was kind of clear about that. Like, they've had this for a very long time, including even before it was 365, it used to be called Business Productivity Online Suite, or the sexy name of BPOS. And fundamentally what it is, and what's great about it over the years, is they keep adding new tools to this Swiss Army knife, this hosted service, the subscription model. They come up with different tiers, they add new solutions to it. They add new features, functions, all of that. They host the data, they do all that on their servers, and they have an uptime guarantee. And then they partner with Microsoft partners with companies like Tobin Solutions to help other organizations with security and support and migration and administration, development, and integration. But it really is a Swiss Army knife. And for some of you, and nothing wrong with that, your Swiss Army knife is that first Swiss Army knife you get with just like the 2 or 3 tools on it, right? You've got Microsoft 365, and you're using Office, and you're using email. And for some, maybe that might be it, and that might be totally sufficient. Maybe you're using Teams on top of that. Maybe some of you have ventured into SharePoint and some other things, but there's just a lot more tools out there. And just like anything, we want you to know what these tools are. But fundamentally, inside of any of these tools, if you're going to use them, is that who's responsible for what in these tools, right? Because you're going to be relying on some of these tools from Microsoft. What does that really mean when you rely on them if you start building them into your business process? And there's a lot of details on here, but fundamentally what this means is regardless of how you operate, regardless of whether you put absolutely every bit of everything you own into the Microsoft cloud, you put your credentials, you put all your data, you do all of that, no matter what, Microsoft still says you are responsible for your data. You're responsible for your endpoints, meaning the workstations you use to access that data, and you're responsible for how you manage your accounts and account access management of the data. Still responsible for all of that. So there's a little bit of that there is to think about when you're implementing any of these components, and we can assist with that along the way. But we want you to get that this might be part of the thought process as we start to dive in on how these things might be useful. A lot of you are in one or more of these tiers of service. We have the different tiers. There's the basic, which Microsoft had a price increase recently. It was their first price increase in I think like 10 years, which is pretty amazing, but that's one of the considerations when you move things to Microsoft 365 or any cloud service is what happens when they raise prices. But nonetheless, that happened, and business standards stayed at the same, apps for business stayed the same, and they increased business premium, which has additional security features to it, and they raised that $2. So that's what's happening there. One of the great things that not everybody thinks about with Microsoft 365 is full mobility, right? You might already be pretty accustomed to taking your email with you. A lot of us have this set up on our phone. Maybe you got Teams on your phone, but all the data that's up in Microsoft 365, you can get anywhere securely without having to set up a VPN. So if you move things there and you want to move documents there, you want to move more collaboration, all of that to the Microsoft 365, you'll be able to see and do all of that from your phone or tablet. You may not want to be able to do that from your phone or tablet, so you can obviously, it's up to you whether you want to use that device. But if you've got people that are on the road, you've got people that are, doing those kind of working vacations. I want to kind of take the day off, but I'm going to check in on email. It's the opportunity to give people what they need wherever they are. That's really what it's about. And some of you have systems where you can't do that. And maybe that's okay. But looking at things in 365, there might be that opportunity to do that. So guest access is another great thing with Microsoft 365. So it's no longer limited to just you and your team. You can give access to collaborate with your customers, your vendors, your business partners. They don't need a Microsoft license. You can tune it so it's secure, so you're only giving them what they need. And then you can share things with them. You can collaborate on documents, calendars, teams, and more. So that's kind of a nice thing, right? As you're thinking about some of those things I was talking about before that don't work, sometimes what doesn't work is the communication as it flows through the process. And, we've got internal people that are part of the process, but we have external people that are a part of the process. Again, those partners, those vendors, the customers. So maybe there's a way of including them in the loop that makes data gathering, data presentation, information sharing, whatever all that is, available without any additional cost to you. That might solve a problem. One of the great things that is just one of the hidden gems of Microsoft 365 is this: when it's all there, Microsoft, good or bad, depending on your perception of Big Brother and all of what's possible with computers and doomsday machines and all of that. But fundamentally, from a business perspective, this is one of the holy grails. All the information behind the scenes is connected on its own in a lot of different ways, automatically, in ways you might already be thinking about doing it. It might connect it based on people. It might be connected based on department, full text search, things like that. Information entered in one place doesn't have to be entered somebody else because you can search it from here. So all of that kind of stuff becomes available as the more you move into Microsoft 365, Skynet or not. Security, Microsoft is concerned about your security in here. So they do have a dashboard that talks about what your security score is as you do things, because that's a concern, right? If we're going to move things to the cloud, one of the questions I get is, Jeremy, how secure is this? And I'll say, well, it's only as secure as it is, but there's things we can do about it. So let's take a look at it and see if the risk, once we really look at objectively what the risk is, makes sense or not. For some people, this is kind of a hidden gem. you know, they have Outlook, they use the full Outlook program at work, and that's the only way they ever access their email or calendar. Maybe even from home, they load Outlook. Now, if you like Outlook, that's great. But then you're used to, hey, I got to manage my kid's calendar and he's got or she's got Gmail. And I use Gmail for over here. And I'm used to using Gmail from a web browser or something like that. One of the things that's nice is everything I'm going to show you, a lot of it is available from a web browser, including email, including things like that. Now, why is that useful? One is some people just like that experience. Certain things work differently in a web browser. You know, Microsoft tries to have a consistent experience throughout everything, but sometimes there's pieces that just lend themselves better to a browser experience. Another nice thing is if your Outlook is getting a little hinky for some reason, because it's a program and it, you know, breaks like anything, and it's a pretty big old program. Outlook dates back like 20 years or something like that. So there's a lot of legacy there. If you're having issues, you know, while we're trying to fix it, you might get into the browser. You just log into office.com and you can open up your email and be there. And that's with a lot of the applications I'm going to be showing you. Another great thing, if you're at the right tier of service, is you want to be able to encrypt your email. That's built into a lot of the systems. And that means when you're in Outlook and you go to that options tab and hit permissions, you'll have an option to encrypt or do not forward. This is nice if you have things you want to send out, like do any of you send credit cards or contracts or sensitive information? Any of you required to do sensitive information, right? Because you have HIPAA laws or you're an attorney or a banker or anything like that, or you just want to send it to somebody and just know that if it gets intercepted, they're not going to be able to read it. That's built in and easy to do. And you can even brand it with your own company name here and logo. So when they get the email that says, you know, Jeremy has sent you an encrypted email and they click to go to that website, it'll have the Tobin logo and things like that, or your logo. Microsoft OneNote. How many of you, part of your process or system issue or part of what's not working is you have not got all your policies and procedures in one place? Or you've got them in one place and they're sitting in a binder on a shelf, wherever that shelf is, but they're not accessible where the people need it. This is like a digital binder. This is an electronic version of the process, the procedure binder. You can make it all free form. You can put tables in it. You can create different notebooks as different binders. It's got that whole binder metaphor. Hey, it's a snow day. What do we do? Open up your OneNote and search snow day. And there's the tab that tells people exactly what to do on a snow day, right? Hey, COVID protocol. What's our COVID protocol? Open up, open COVID. There's your procedure, whatever that is for you. So this is an extraordinary, you have it with everything you own in Microsoft. If you've got Microsoft Office or you've got any tier of 365. So that solves that issue. Microsoft SharePoint, part of one of the challenges you have is how to communicate and collaborate and how to use SharePoint, and you hear about it, but you're like not quite sure what it is. So for some of you who've been around for a while and you remember kind of the old school term, the intranet, maybe you still have an intranet or you used to like your intranet, which was that internal website that was only accessible to the company. And that's where you had the internal vacation calendar. That's where you had the list of documents. That's where you had whatever that intranet had. Here's my wiki, internal wiki of documentation. So that's what SharePoint is. SharePoint fundamentally is that old school intranet evolved to modern day needs. One of the things Microsoft discovered inside of SharePoint was document storage, that a lot of people want to do that. So a lot of people, SharePoint is document storage. That's where Teams shares its documents inside of SharePoint. But again, that old school intranet stuff, out of the box, there's what they call a SharePoint team site. That might be really useful. Maybe one of your challenges in your organization is people don't know what's happening today. We've got a calendar of stuff out there and people aren't looking at it. Well, maybe we make it part of their day to try and get them to go look at the SharePoint site. In addition to checking out Facebook and news and whatever else they might check out during the day, they check out our internal site very easily from their phone or from their computer's web browser, and they'll see what's happening today. Maybe it's what's happened recently. Maybe it's these are the new documents we have. Here's an alert. Here's quick links to our other cloud services we use. You can go crazy with it. Out of the box, it does a lot. And of course, you can customize and tweak these things to be, meet your needs. But that SharePoint site, that team site, sometimes, and especially as we have remote workers, some of you never went remote. Some of you have got people that have gone fully remote. Some of you are in a hybrid, or kind of you're going to flex, or some of you just want to have it be available that, hey, if someone wants to, one of the things I think some people got out of COVID and working from home is that they know how to do it now. And so sometimes, like at Tobin, one of the things we're more flexible about is, hey, I want to go on a little bit longer vacation, but I want to work half days and not use up, okay, we can make that work because we've got all the systems set up. We've got everything in place where that can happen. So it opens up new possibilities for how people work. It opens up possibilities for hiring people outside of your location. Maybe you find someone in California or Kalamazoo or, Canada or something like that, that can do the job. And if they only had access to your systems and information. We talked about people storing files in SharePoint. And for some of you, that's another way you're using Microsoft Office right now, or Microsoft 365. I still call it Microsoft 365, Microsoft Office 365, Office 365. It's called Microsoft 365 now. And sometimes when I say the other, that's what I mean. Because old habits die hard. So anyway, putting files in SharePoint, there's a number of different ways you can do that. This is not a whole SharePoint lesson on that, but once they're up there, they are secure, they are mobile, they're available in different ways, and you don't have to get to them with a VPN. They're searchable in a way they might not have been searchable before. So there's a lot of things you can do with SharePoint and OneDrive of getting your documents, whether it's your personal documents stored in OneDrive, your company documents stored in SharePoint. Oh, and guess what you can also do is once they're up in SharePoint, you can put them somewhere where you can collaborate with a vendor, right? You could create a section of SharePoint where you just have these documents that are only accessible by you and your vendor, or you and your partner, or you and your customer. But now that they're up in the cloud, that can become something that's now available. What could happen if your partner had direct access to updating a spreadsheet that right now gets updated by 50 emails that go back and forth? What could you do if you had some extra time? If you're managing a process where it's 50 emails going back and forth, if only they had access secure to their section of the spreadsheet. So new possibilities emerge. You could do something else with that time, take on a new process. For some of you, Microsoft Teams you've used for webinars and video chats, or voice chats. Some of you are using it internally for chat. That's what Teams is. Teams is that replacement for texting on your phone, right? You can use the whole Teams app, and instead of texting back and forth on your phone using the regular texting app, you can use Teams. And what's beautiful about that is when you go into the office, everything's there on your Teams app on your desktop. Microsoft is telling you that Teams is now really, it's a collaboration platform. Like for some companies, Microsoft is saying, look, there are certain businesses that lend themselves to operating completely out of Microsoft Teams. You can share calendars and information and collaborate and talk to one another and put documents there. You can do integration with other applications that you use and have it all visible from inside of Microsoft Teams. And you can install Teams on your desktop from a web browser into iOS and Android. And you can invite guests and collaborate with other people. Teams is very powerful. It's now a phone system. You can replace your regular phone system with it. There's a lot there, and that can really, when you think about what sometimes isn't working with systems and processes earlier, sometimes what's not working is how do we connect people? How do we get people to collaborate? How do we get them the information they need? At Tobin, we've been working with the metaphor of passing the baton like in a relay race, right? When you're going to pass that baton of information to the next person in the process so they can succeed, like, how do you do that? When you're running a relay race on the track and field, you got this aluminum baton or whatever, and you're passing it off. At work, how do you do it? Is it an email? Is it a spreadsheet? Is it a call? Is it a ran into them in the hallway? I mentioned 365 Business Voice. This rides on Microsoft Teams. So in addition to making voice and video calls over the internet, like a Skype or like a Zoom, you can also have dial-in numbers and dial-out numbers, and this can be a complete replacement for many of you for your phone system. What's nice about this and everything else I'm showing you is it's the same ID and password. So all you have to do is add this to your account as another subscription, as a monthly billing, and it's very competitive with other cloud phone services. Use the same ID and password and you're in. You can use desktop phones. You can use your brand new iPhone with your sweet AirPods. You can use a laptop to do this with headphones. A lot of different ways to connect. You can mix and match. Microsoft Planner. So how many of you live your life like you love your planners out there or your planner wannabes, right? But you're like, what is this other tool? How can I do this? How do I do it now? Well, one thing that's nice is Microsoft has a full task-based planning and project management system all built in. We have a whole webinar on it. We're not going to do a huge deep dive on this, but the idea is you can create tasks. You can add those tasks to different buckets based on, what that bucket is. A bucket could be a list of related tasks. It could be an event. It could be a department, however you want to classify those buckets. It's up to you. You can assign those to people inside of Microsoft 365. And they'll get notified that you assign them to a task. They can go in here and mark those tasks complete. They can add notes to those tasks. You can look at those tasks over a timeline. There's a lot of stuff that's there. Very cool, built into all your plans, free. There's an app as well. So how useful is this if you are out sending someone out in the field? Maybe that's one of the things. Hey, we got the proposal signed by the client. We got the down payment. We handed it off to the service team. They go out in the field to deliver it. And there's a gap in how they report back to us how things are going. What's done, what's not done. The project manager wants to know, how is the field delivering on stuff? This could be a way they could know, because your person in the team lead out in the field could go into their project Microsoft Planner on their phone and mark a task complete or add a note or something. You own this. I'm guaranteed this is going to solve somebody's issue. So pick up the gauntlet and run with it. A little more detail I was just talking about the buckets. And Microsoft has Microsoft Project. Some of you may have been using Microsoft Project for a long time. Some of you may still be using Microsoft Project. Microsoft still has their full desktop version of Microsoft Project with an on-premise server if you want and all of that. And then they've also got all of their cloud services around Project. And a lot of it for you may work great, right? And they have different tiers of service. You don't have to, if you want to use everything that they've got in the cloud, you don't have to stand up a server. So implementation threshold is a little bit lower. So if you're a project user, you might really like to be like, oh, I remember Project. Yeah, I wish I had Project. I had that at my old job. If I had that here, I could really put together the plans I need to lead the team successfully or to accomplish these projects that I want to get done because my boss gave me these rocks for the quarter to complete. And how am I going to do that? Or I've got 10 projects for clients and I want to look at them and aggregate them and assign my resources across those. You could do all of that with Microsoft Project. So it's different than what I just showed you with Microsoft Planner. Microsoft Planner is more of a task-based focus. This is more, I don't know how project works. More advanced project stuff for you people that have degrees in project management, or you've done those, you've got those certificates, or you're just a guru with it. You can do all of that. And again, all built in. When you add somebody in, they can, same security, ID and password. When you're linking to documents inside a Microsoft Project, you can be linking those to things that are in SharePoint, and it can all reside in one place. Visio. Microsoft recently added, so for some of you, if you don't know Visio, Visio is a great tool that Microsoft has that you can create flowcharts, you can create office layouts, you can create network diagrams. It's a way for visually describing information and different ways and connecting it. There's a free tier, all that works through the web, where you can do basic things. I don't know if you can do a swim lane diagram like this one through it, but you can do basic. So for some of you, it's like I'm talking about your systems and process. And you're like, oh, this is how I know the system to process to be. And if you were to talk to your right-hand person, they may have a disagreement for how that process looks. And if you talk to the person that's actually running the process, they might have a different idea for how it looks. So how can you all get on the same page? You can put it together in a flow chart. You can start writing that down. And what's really cool is once you get the flow chart in there, they can see that from anywhere, from any device. And you can have links to documents and SharePoint. So if they're like, oh, there's an order form thing on here, what do I do with that? They can click on that and link to the order form documentation that you created in SharePoint and stored. How do you train your people when they come on board? Well, let me show you how we do this process. Let me show you the documentation. You got questions? Oh, you didn't follow the process? Well, if you're like me, what you might have done in the past is you can scream and kick. Why didn't somebody do it this way? This is our process. Now, the plan is, instead of that, which, you know, that yelling has limited effect, is to bring out the process and say, look, here's our documentation. Here's where it is in the process. Here's what the expectation is. So will you do that next time? Or do you have any questions on that? No? Okay, great. Got it. Sometimes people just forget, or sometimes it's institutional knowledge shared from generation to generation, you know, that someone just spoke about. That brains are a really bad place to keep information like this. Forums and quizzes and polls. Microsoft has a whole forms gathering system built into it. Data gathering, all built in. Are you trying to gather information from your team about something? Hey, we want to do something. We want to know what you think about it. Oh, we can do a quick internal survey and send it to everybody and capture all the information. And we can even open up the data in Excel if you're an Excel guru and want to do some additional analysis or whatever. These are really easy to set up. You can get crazy complex with them like anything, and even that's pretty easy to get going. What about gathering information for a project? What about asking your client what they think about what you're doing after a project's complete? These are things you can give. You can create the form here, get a link, and then you can email the link to somebody and they can click the link in a web browser, open up your form and add it. So this data collection, when I was talking about those baton handoffs, a lot of it is just what data goes in the baton. What are you trying to collect here? Let's get clear about that. And let's set up some structure for success to really be able to collect that data and analyze it and do something with it. So maybe you want to do some training for those people on board, right? You onboarded some new people. Do they get it? Can you put together 3-4 questions just to know, did they understand what you just trained them on? You know, just to ask. Be a good thing to know. All right. Microsoft To Do. We talked about tasks before, and there's to-dos in Outlook. And like I said, there's to-dos in Microsoft Planner. And there's to-dos you can put in OneNote. And there's all these places you can drop to-dos. You can be in Outlook and you can flag an email for follow-up. Microsoft To Do aggregates all of those to-dos from all those places in one place, and even lets you add some additional to-dos right inside of Microsoft To Do. They don't necessarily show up in any of those other locations, but you can share them. You can create to-do lists that are shared by other people. And you might be a to-do person, right? How do you organize your day and live your life? Some people calendar, meeting by meeting, and I schedule things that way. Some people, I just need a list of these 5 things I'm going to do today. There's a really cool feature with Microsoft To Do called Today, I think is what it is, or My Day, sorry. And when you open up Microsoft To Do for the first time in the morning, My Day is a blank slate. And right at the bottom, you can click Add Something, or it'll even remind you of some that you missed from yesterday, or let you look at some other ones that you are still on your list. And then you just hit them and add them up. These are the 3 I'm going to work on today. I'm going to add this, hit plus, do that. Oh, wait, here's another one I want to add. Got to get to the dry cleaners too. Better throw that in here. And got to call that client back about that proposal. Add that in here. Some people work great on to-do lists. This is that tool for that. And it shows up on your all your phones and tablets and all of that. If you flag an email for follow-up, it'll show up here. So it's nifty and can solve some problems. for personal organization or for to-do lists. What is your team up to today? Maybe you're a team lead and your team is up to like 3 or 4 things today. You could put a list, share it with all 3, 4 of them. Here's what we're up to. Here's what's going on. Microsoft Azure is, there's a lot there. The way I'd like you to think about it is we're talking about moving products and service or solutions and solving problems up to Microsoft 365 by, instead of using a spreadsheet, I'm going to use Microsoft Forms, or instead of a bunch of Word documents, I'm going to use OneNote and store it in SharePoint. Like, that's kind of one conversation we're having. Some of you have applications that are just do not lend themselves to that, but you're like, I've got this on-premise server and I'm concerned about security around that. And I know when the warranty's up in a year, Jeremy's going to come and talk to me about that we can't renew this warranty anymore. And what are we going to do about this? And all of those things, you still have these, or you just don't want to learn a new process. You're like, you know what, Jeremy, all these tools are great. I just want it exactly the way I have it, but I want more security around it. So Microsoft has something called Azure, which is their kind of cloud hosting side where you can move servers, whole servers up into the cloud and run them virtually. So you can take your whole file server, your whole S drive or whatever you've got, move it up to Microsoft Azure. For some of you, this may be something you want to look at. We're including in conversations, but Microsoft offers this as well. And guess what? Same IDs, passwords, some of those things. They have a lot of other options inside of Azure. It's way more than just virtual server hosting. But for today, that's the bottom line. Microsoft Whiteboard, again, collaboration. And they keep improving this product. How do you collaborate with your team, pre-COVID, or even now if you're a remote workforce, or you just got some people that are traveling, but you'd like to include them, maybe a customer or something like that. How do we get the whiteboard going here? Right? Whiteboards are great. Now, sometimes I'm the only one standing at the whiteboard anyways. I'm drawing and doing things like that. So you can use it that way. But sometimes it's like, hey, you come up to the whiteboard and you contribute. How do they do that virtually? They can do it through the whiteboard application. They can put sticky notes on. They can start to organize things. Everyone can be in it at the same time and moving things around. And in the end, you can print them and share them and do all that. So that's kind of cool. So that's available. So that's, again, how do you share information? How do you brainstorm? For some people, I hear this a lot, and I'm not saying it's true or not, but I do hear people saying that people that worked remotely, like, it didn't work. We've got to get people in the office working together again. And I'm not saying that isn't true. Like, there is something about being together with people and, and just being connected to people and running into things. And there are things that can happen when you're walking through the hall that may not happen when you're on Teams together or something like that, or they're sitting at home in one place and you're, 40 minutes away somewhere else. But nevertheless, there are ways to make that experience of working from home way more effective than how we're doing it. And sometimes it's enabling and using some of these technologies. Sometimes it's a little more intention around how do we use Teams? How do we engage people? Yeah, it's pretty boring when I'm the only one up sitting there talking, but if they can go on the whiteboard and start adding things, yeah, great. If we can add a poll to our Teams meeting here using Microsoft Forms to engage people during a meeting, to gather information, to have some fun, have fun at work, all that. There's ways of using all this technology to have that, because that's sometimes for some of you, that's the problem. And for some of you, getting people back to work may not solve the other issue of engagement, right? We've all had people at work where engagement was still not happening. Microsoft Lists. This is another, how are we doing on time? Oh, we're good on time. So Microsoft Lists, this is another thing. How many of you have lists? I'm sure you all do. And the lists are in different ways, right? You might put them on a legal pad. You might put them as a to-do item. You might have them in a spreadsheet. You've got different columns and you make your list that way and you're sharing your list with other people. You might have it on the back of pieces of paper, sticky notes around your system and all that. Some of these are personal lists. Some of these are lists you want to share with people. Some of these are a list, like you've got a whiteboard sitting in your office somewhere, that's a list of like open jobs and a current status of those jobs. That might be a list you've got. With Microsoft Lists, there's an app that it's got Microsoft Lists that is both in the web as well as phones and tablets, where you can create those lists. You can import your spreadsheet, you can import other things in here to get it started. You can make it look cool. Like you can put like little things in here, like, oh, a status. Oh, this is red. Oh, the list knows to make that red if the status, I'm looking at on the right side of the picture where it talks about animation misting and it's red and it's got blocked or whatever that says. Booked, maybe. I can't read it from here, but whatever that says. But you can make these lists like a little smarter, right? You can add a little something instead of you going up and grabbing a red marker and going on the whiteboard and putting this one in red. You can have the lists be a little smarter. You can make those lists available for updates from anywhere they are. It can be a list. These are the ones we're working on today. And maybe instead of going up on the whiteboard, you put a screen up that shows today's list, the list you want to show, the same thing that the whiteboard was showing up. You know, if you've got that physical whiteboard. So there's ways of dealing with all of that. But boy, wouldn't it be great to have this information with them? Maybe you wouldn't even need the whiteboard because everyone just has the whiteboard in their pocket or on their computer screen, right? So different things to think about. New possibilities can show up by having a list. So I guarantee you've got lists. Even if it's your own personal list, you might find this is a better list management than the notebook I got for free at the trade show that I'm still using. Nothing wrong with that other list, but well, here you can share it. You can automate things with it. You can assign things to people. I guarantee for some of you, what's not working in your system is you have a list that you can't collaborate on easily. And if you had better collaboration, you might be more effective in your system or process. Power BI. How many of you would love a dashboard of how you're doing? Maybe you get some of this. Maybe you get in a report that you look at weekly and you turn to the last page to look at the numbers. Maybe you get a daily something. Maybe you get a daily report, but it's numbers, but boy, if it was visual, it might really stand out as to what's happening. Power BI is a dashboard. It's all that information. It pulls information from spreadsheets and from databases, and it's a little complex, but it's pretty cool. And again, if it solves an issue for you, what if instead of your whiteboard, or in addition to your whiteboard, you also had this in your sales office? Here's where we're at with sales so far this week. Here's how many calls we've had. Here's how many meetings we've booked. Here's how many open, maybe you've got on your service side of your business, right? You know, the people that are calling in with questions and issues and, you know, praising, right? We love those when they call in at least and say, hey, you guys are great. Track those too. How many attaboys did you get today, right? So you can put those things on here, share it with people. They can see this. You can put this on a TV screen. You know, you can put a display in the hallway and shoot this up there. And again, you can see it from your apps, from a phone, from a tablet, from your desktop, from a web browser. You can embed the dashboard into a SharePoint team site. Remember we were talking about SharePoint before and how you had that intranet and where some of that information comes in. You could actually embed, you know, your weekly results in this area of the business and put it right there. One of the business gurus I follow says, you know, when your business can run itself basically, and really the only extent of what you're running your business on is, you know, you can run your business from a beach anywhere you want. And then all you're really doing is once a week for 15 minutes or once a month for 15 minutes or half hour, you open up your dashboard of your key performance indicators, check in with your leadership team, say, how's that going? That's kind of the dream. When I think about that dream, Power BI is what I envision, right? Like being able to just kind of be able to check in on just those 4 or 5 numbers. I really need to know that everything's on track. And if you want to go crazy, you got 50 numbers, you can put that in here too. And the other thing that's cool is you can drill behind the numbers. This is live data. So if this number, this 104 in the example on the right, is coming from a spreadsheet, you can click on that and drill right into the spreadsheet. It's live that way. So cool stuff. How much time and this is going to be, I don't know how many zillions of minutes this is going to be, do you spend trying to find documents? And I'm not talking about just finding some obscure document that, you know, someone had 2 years ago. I'm talking about a document someone sent you in your email like 3 weeks ago or yesterday, or that spreadsheet that your ops person updated for you. We spend a lot of time looking for documents. Delve, all it cares about is where are those documents, and it puts them in one place, hopefully trying to be smart enough to get you the ones at your fingertips that you are most interested in. So when you go to Delve, it's going to show you a list of attachments that were in your email recently. When you go into Delve, it's going to show you those last couple documents that your right-hand person was working on, as long as you have access to them. And a lot of times those are the documents you want anyways, right? It's the budget spreadsheet, it's the project list, it's the meeting agenda. All Delve cares about is where are your documents and how can I get you as quickly as possible to those documents. So I use this sometimes when I can't find a doc. It's right there. It's right there. Microsoft Stream, think of it like internal YouTube channel, right? Everyone knows YouTube or TikTok or any of those where people share videos of long videos, short videos, quick videos. Any of you that have a smartphone, you all have a complete movie studio in your pocket. Like an amazing movie studio with lights, cameras, stereo pickup mic, HD video. What if you've recorded a process you were doing? Here's how we replace the toner in the printer. Here's where the toner is. Here's how we replace this part on the truck. Make a video of it. Here's a welcome video from the president of the company that we show people when they come on board. Make a video of it. Now, you don't want to put those out on YouTube because they may be internal. Microsoft Stream is internal. Everyone's got access to it. You can organize it in different ways, in folders. You can share it internally. You can embed them on a SharePoint team site. You can share them internally. Sometimes the system or process breakdown that you've got in your whatever area of the company you're looking at here is they don't know how to do it. And the person that knows how to do it is on vacation or left. And when they train the new person, they only showed them 10 of the 20 steps. Hopefully the 20 steps are recorded in the video. Now it's like, okay, person, you're new on board, watch the video. Now you're going to sit down with the person who's onboarding you, and now the video is going to have some context behind it. You're going to have seen something before. A lot of ways to improve communication with video. Some of you, you're like, Jeremy, this all looks good, but I want to do like a custom app. I've got this idea. I've got some data over here. I've got some data over here, and I want to do an app for my business that only for my team to use. I don't need the world to know it. Maybe I want some customers to use it. You know, if I could share this with customers, that might be cool. But I want them to be able to get it from their phone. I want it to be a kind of a custom app that looks like just what I want. I just want it my way. Guess what? Microsoft has a solution for that called Microsoft Power Apps. Using all the data and information I'm showing you. And this, you know, it's got some basic apps. And then it can get complex like any development effort. But it's a path forward. You can now create a custom app for exactly what you want. Maybe it's collecting data by the people that are your truck delivery people. Maybe it's an app to share some information with the customer. I don't know. That's where you get to really get creative. But it's there. Power Automate. This is another feature you have of Microsoft 365. And this is, think of Power Automate as like, you know, those kind of machines where you put something in on one end and then you maybe put two things in on the other end and you turn a crank and then something new comes out on the other side, or what came through on the other side gets processed. This is kind of like that, except it does it between web services. So if you think about, here's an example. We're talking to a customer right now about a process. They have an ERP system, an enterprise resource planning system that they use that runs their business. And one of the things it does is when they send out a quote to a customer, it creates an email. Well, what they want to do is they want to be able to track these emails in a way that the system doesn't currently track it. They want the information that's in the email. They want the attachment that's on the email. They want to be able to go find it later on easily. Because sometimes that customer calls in and says, I'm calling about a quote, and they want to be able to just quickly find it, have everything around it. So we're going to look at using Power Automate, where we're going to integrate 2 web services and do something with it. So one of the web services is Microsoft Exchange and Outlook, right? That's the data that's inside of Microsoft 365. That's this person's email, because that's where the data exists. And what's going to happen is Power Automate is going to look at that person's email periodically, and it's going to look for the indicator that this is an email of interest. Oh, this is one from the quoting system. This is one I care about. And then it's going to run its little process. It's going to start turning its crank. And in this case, the crank is, I'm going to take that email, I'm going to take the attachment, I'm going to create a document in SharePoint with this so I can go find it later, and I'm going to add the job number to the document as a custom field so I can create a little database of these documents and job numbers and other information so I can go find it later. Turn the crank, get it set up. Now that's going to happen all day long. All they have to do is go into SharePoint and find those documents. That's an example. So for some of you, that's a great way of streamlining things. Having things happen with velocity. You don't have to wait for somebody to check their email to do a process. Right now, for some of you, the process that you've got is contingent on somebody getting to their email. Nothing wrong with that. But what they might be doing is something that's very automated, and they might have way more useful things they could be doing with their time than taking an email and moving an attachment. I'm not saying that's not useful, but they might have more useful use of their time, right? There might be something that only they know, but moving an attachment, we can automate that. Yammer social media, another great way to connect your teams. We're all familiar with social media. Some of us love it, some of us hate it. Some of us have our pet social media, love one, hate the other. Some of us think it's going to doom humanity. Whatever your view of social media is, it's a thing, and it does have its uses, especially in connecting people, right? Internally, you know, if you're familiar with Facebook, right, or Instagram or any of those, you can post something, you can post a picture, you can post a video, you can post something, and then people can like it, people can comment on it. So that's handy, right? That could be, some people really operate that way. Some of you are hiring people where your system or process is going to occur so completely antiquated because they've grown up in the last 10 years with social media, with access to the web, with access to online learning and everything in the web and documents available everywhere and all that kind of stuff. So there's nothing wrong with your systems and processes if they occur antiquated. They might still be just unfamiliar to them, and there's some training you could do, and we talked about different ways you can create that training. But for some of it, this is, you know, this is how they operate. Why force them into something else? You know, if they've got questions and they know how to use Facebook, use Yammer for their onboarding. Hey, I've got questions. I'm onboarding, but I'm not in your office anymore. I'm working out of, you found me as a great hire from Austin, Texas. Because I can, you've now set up where I can work remotely. That's great. I can remote into your server and get this stuff, but how do I get connected? Or how do I talk to the person who's responsible for getting me onboarded at the company? What's a fun way to do that? I don't know. Maybe Yammer. Maybe you have a company party once a year and you want people to take pictures and celebrate. Maybe you want to use this for your sales team to celebrate the wins and console the losses and whatever. But it's all built in. It's not external. It's all internal. Uses your same ID and password, so you don't have to worry about it leaving with somebody if they decide to take their Facebook page that you're using with them. You can link to these. So you might have everything that's in Yammer has a web link that you can actually put into, you know, a link anywhere and use it anywhere because all that information is linked in the past. So there's lots of ways to use Yammer social media. Microsoft bookings. How much time are you spending trying to schedule appointments with your customers? There is a tool called Microsoft Bookings that you can set up where you can expose in a secure, limited way where you've got some gaps on your calendar that you want to make available for somebody to schedule for. You could say, hey, every Wednesday from 1 to 4 and every Thursday from 10 to noon, I want to make half-hour appointments available for my customers to be able to schedule with me. And as soon as someone else books it, I want to block it out so no one else can book that time. But I don't want to go back and forth with them on scheduling. Let them figure it out. Here's when I'm available. What an opportunity. What a bunch of time to save, right? For those that want to use this, great. You can put a link at the bottom of your email signature to your bookings page. Wouldn't that be cool? Hey, if you're interested in meeting with me anytime, please click the link below. It won't be anytime. It'll be anytime that works for you, which is really what you want. That's what you ultimately end up doing anyways when you're trying to coordinate schedules. And there may be a time when you're like, no, Jeremy, customer comes first. I'm going to move my schedule. Your choice. But it doesn't hurt to ask the other way first. You can put something in there. If this doesn't work for you, send me a note. We'll see what else happens. That's what they do anyways. But boy, if it worked right away, how much time would that save? With velocity. Velocity is a great word inside of what you can do with Microsoft 365. It can speed up time. We've all got the same 24 hours. It's how you use it effectively is what makes the difference. Microsoft Viva. How many of you are getting Microsoft Viva emails and wondering what the heck is this Microsoft Viva? This is Microsoft using its artificial intelligence on your data behind the scenes to try and help you out. Now, again, I'm not getting into the whole Big Brother Skynet conversation. That's a conversation we can have another day. But as far as how Microsoft uses this, you might find this pretty useful. It's getting, it's handy sometimes. So you can take a look at it. You might be getting some emails. You might be getting, like, here's an example of how it works. I might send an email to somebody saying, hey, I'll follow up with you on this proposal next week. Didn't really give a due date, just said next week. Viva Insights notices that and might present me with a, hey, is this something you want to tend to? Because you said you were going to get somebody something next week. And it might even say, do you want to create a to-do? Do you want to hard schedule something? So it's a bit like a digital assistant in that regard. It might remind you, hey, your day is booked, man. Your week is booked. I've been getting those lately because it's also trying to look at your well-being. And my day is pretty booked, start to finish. And it's like, hey, you want a break in there somewhere, Jeremy? Here's some times that might work. Or, hey, a good practice is book out something on a regular schedule for a little me time. Would you like to do that? And you can click yes, and it'll bring up a little scheduler piece. So Microsoft is going to keep doing this. When people talk about like the smart speakers from Amazon and from Google, and Microsoft had theirs, Cortana, which never really went anywhere. Where did some of that stuff go? Some of that smarts? It's still happening, just behind the scenes in this way, which maybe this would be, where Microsoft wins the day. So all of this, we talked about the Swiss Army knife. I just showed you a bunch of new tools that maybe you knew you had. Maybe now you're like, oh, now I got a few more of these on my Swiss Army knife. And, Tobin can be a Swiss Army knife of support for you around this as well. So there's the shared responsibilities. Some of that's kind of technical, so you may want some assistance on that, especially around security. You don't have to reinvent the wheel. Some of you may want some help on looking at some of your business processes and what that looks like. Some of you want to think about where do some of these things fit, like, hey, I'd like to work on this, but more strategically and in planning long-term for IT, where does this really fit? Or I'd like to get to this, I don't have time, but I'd like to talk about this for next quarter, but I'd like to get a sense for what it might look like from a budget perspective. Perfect. Maybe you're like, yeah, let's get started with some of these. Let's help set up administration. Maybe you've got some data you want to migrate to get it kicked off. Maybe you're like, hey, that Microsoft list thing looks cool because we got a spreadsheet right now that people cannot see except when they're in the office. I'd love the people on the road to be able to see it easily, but those spreadsheets on a web browser, it's so tiny, looks terrible, but that list looks nice. We can help with that. We can train you how to use it. Don't underestimate training in this. A lot of IT projects fail, not because the tool was insufficient or you picked the wrong tool, because you didn't show people how to use it. You didn't give them the time to learn and the follow-up training. That's an internal process we can assist with to make sure that's happening. Change management. People don't like change. We understand that. Part of it's training, knowing that they're going to be set up for success instead of thrown in the deep end. And sometimes there's a little more integration and development that happens between these. Some of these things you can get set up in a few minutes, like to really get like a chunk of something going. Some of it, takes a little more time. So why am I telling you about the Swiss Army knife of Tobin and why we can do all this before? Because after this, I want you to go take a look. Now, for some of you, this might be ruining your morning. This might be ruining your day because you like to go play and see what's there. For some of you, maybe I would invite you to maybe make this the carrot at the end of the day or the carrot at the end of the week. But eventually you're going to go play. And how do you do that? Go to https://office.com. That's the web front end to Office. You click the little waffle menu up there. That's what I think it's actually called. That's your start button. And you'll see all those apps there. Some of them may be set up. Some of them may have some data in there. Some of them may require another license. There's going to be things you're going to look at. You're going to have questions about how to use this. I don't invite you to start just jumping in and fixing problems and stuff right away unless you're really clear you know what you're doing and got the blessing of people involved, because it's another way to step on a landmine and say, oh, we're going to do it this way, and then throw it out there, and then there's no training or change management, and it didn't quite meet the need. And now people are just wondering what your flavor of the day is here. So go play, have fun, discover, but when you come back, we're your Swiss Army knife of questions on how to really make this work, how to make it work for you now and over time. And that's it. That's what we've got. I'm gonna be around here for questions you might have, anything like that. We can do that. If you've got questions you want to follow up on afterwards, or you want some help with any of this, let us know. If you think this would be a valuable thing, like Jeremy, I love this, but you got to sell it to my executive team or to some other people, or I got this person that's my, they've been here for 25 years and they just want to do things their way. I just like to at least see some of these possibilities, maybe have a chance to ask some questions. We can do that too. Lots of ways to get this information. And it's really a journey. It's not about getting there perfectly everything today. It's about just getting there over time and really maximizing the use of what you've already invested in. Because like I said, almost everything I'm showing you here, you already own or have easy access to in a very affordable way. To be able to leverage that for your business success, leverage that to meet your goals or to shoot for bigger goals or to just stop the fires, reduce the fires, eliminate the fires. What would it be like if somebody actually was able to gather information in a way up front, all the way, and you're able to do what you want to do all the way through the process, through delivery? How many fires would you save? How many more jobs could you take on? How much more money could you make? How many more people on your team could you keep happy? Because nobody wants to work in a place where it's fire after fire after fire. That can be discouraging. So lots of opportunity here. So all those areas you looked at, some ideas that maybe percolated where things weren't working, or you're like, if I could just get this one little problem solved, maybe one of these tools could do it, but you're not even sure about that. Give us a call. Drop something in the chat. Otherwise, we're going to wrap up here in a minute. Thank you for being here today. Be safe, be well, enjoy the summer. Looks like we're getting more nicer days than not. So hopefully you enjoy a good summer. And thanks for everything. Thanks for being here. And watch for that email on the survey, and that'll call it complete. All right, I'll be here. Thanks. Bye, everyone.